up here. In this morning's service, we have two people that we are celebrating. Two people taking two different, yet two great steps of faith. We have already had Kath commissioning earlier in the service. And Kath, where have you gone, Kath? I'm not sure where you are. Oh, there you go. She's over there. It's just really exciting to see you going out in faith and obedience. Thank you, Kath. International mission is part of our DNA at DCBC, and it's something that we want to continue to do. We want to continue sending people out as Kath is going. So blessings upon you. I also want to acknowledge Mel McNatty, who was up here emceeing that part of the service. She leads our international mission area, and she's only returned a few days ago from leading a team of our young adults on a mission trip to Cambodia. And she returned with ill health, as often happens when you come back from that part of the world. So thank you to you, Mel, both for your leading there, but also your leading this morning. And then at the end of this morning's service, we will see Bethany Astwood take a step of faith and obedience to Jesus Christ and getting baptised here before all of you, with all of us, as her church whānau. Woohoo! There we go. I like it. Sandwiched somewhat in between these two pieces of celebration is myself. And this morning, I want to talk briefly to you about peace. And peace is something that has already been mentioned several times in this morning's service. It is a theme that Christians often focus on in the lead up to Christmas. I'm just going to raise this a bit. There we go. Firstly, I want to share some things about our leadership plans for 2025. I want to do this because I realise some of you may be feeling a lack of peace around that and how this church will be led next year. And I can understand if some of you are feeling that way. Our pastoral leadership team is much smaller than it was. In fact, by the time we finish 2024, there will only be 3 of us on that team. Oh. That's it. I'm not sure if that was like an applause, we're with you, or it's like, great, let's see if we can get it smaller. No smaller, thank you God. Obviously, we will need to replace the people that have left. We will need to grow this team again, but it is going to take time. It is not going to happen quickly. It is not going to happen in the first few weeks or months of 2025. So in the meantime, we have to have peace. We have to trust the plans that God has. And I can already see that He has very exciting plans for us in 2025 in this whole area of church leadership. It has actually been exciting for me to see just how much potential there is in this church, including some very young leaders who have come up through our church youth groups and young adult groups and various other small groups. Next year is an opportunity for us to trust God with new leaders and also trust God with new ways of leading, new ways of doing things. I obviously do not have time this morning to share all of our plans and thoughts, but I will share about a few areas of leadership that I think you may be concerned about. So first of all, Jennifer Crump is stepping down from our pastoral leadership team. She is the person that oversees our children's area and young families in the church. It obviously means that eventually we will need to find a new leader for children and young families. We do have a way ahead for 2025. Zoe Kupinger is already a DCBC apprentice, and she will continue to lead wonderfully in the local mission area. But for next year, we have added some extra hours to her role. Don't worry, we have asked her about this. For part of this, she will mentor key leaders in the children's area, and she'll be a link back to the pastoral leadership team because she's often here in the office with us through the week. And she will help the children's ministries with the transition through to holding 2 Sunday morning services. She is not replacing Jen, I need to make that clear, but she is helping us with some key roles in that children's area in the interim period. You might be wondering about the other children's leaders. So the intermediates have a range of great leaders of different ages. They're actually meeting this evening, and Jen is talking with them about the best way to lead this ministry for 2025. Mr. Cameron Grinley, who's down in the front middle he's got both his baseball cap and his Santa hat on. That's a real fashion statement. Cameron has volunteered to lead our Orbit group, and he's already gathered together a great group of young adults to lead that with him, as well as some other adults that have been in that area for a long time. And then we still have Francis leading our little Orbit area and Lydia leading Creche. And Creche is taking place just through that wall as we speak. Hopefully you've read in the newsletter or in an email sent out to you about our proposal to take Zach Martin on as an apprentice for 20 hours a week. If you're not sure who Zach is, he was the one standing behind this keyboard only a few minutes ago. His role would be to contribute to the development and leadership of our young professionals or young workers area. I realise that we're struggling to come up with the right name for that. But he will also develop a range of communications and missions projects. I am stepping down as young adult leader at DCBC, but I will continue to support that ministry from behind the scenes. The new young adult leader for 2025 is Tim Hislop. You here somewhere, Tim? I should have. Oh, he's sitting down with the young adults. Amen. Well done, Tim. Okay. That tells you everything you need to know about Tim already. Tim is already a part of the young adults leadership team. He's been with us for most of 2025. He is doing things a little bit differently next year. He will still be working full-time as a teacher, and he wants to test out whether he could get more involved in church leadership over time. I think that in the long term, we need a young adult leader that is working part-time or full-time for the church. But for next year, we have an opportunity for Tim to test this out, and we've been coming up with a good plan for how this can work alongside his full-time job. He will have several very experienced young adult leaders who are staying on in 2025 gathered around him and supporting him in that role. So that is young adults. Mr. Philip Porter has stepped down from leadership in DCBC, and I realise some of you will be wondering what happens with preaching, seeing as that was one of his main roles. I am going to do extra preaching in the early months of next year. I'm not trying to say that I am a brilliant replacement for Philip, but I have been working quite closely with him already in the preaching area for the last couple of years. Alongside me, we actually have a great range of preachers, both people who are young and old, people who are male and female, some people who have considerable preaching experience, some people who have only preached once or twice, but we think have great potential. So there's actually a very full preaching team in place already. As next year goes on, we will also explore the possibility of bringing in a local guest speaker to do a few sermons. Maybe by the second half of the year, you'll be sick of seeing and hearing me up here, so we can bring someone in to help with that. Philip has graciously worked with me over the past few weeks to come up with the preaching plan for next year. And I can tell you that we will be preaching through the book of Mark, and we've already put together a sermon series, 30 Sunday mornings in the book of Mark. So we will get to the end of the Gospel of Mark by the time we reach the end of next year. The two apprentices that I've mentioned, both Zoe Kupinger and Zach Martin, will be helping me with service planning and coordinating, because obviously I will need to put more time and energy into preparing sermons and being up here preaching. I could keep going on and share more with you about other leaders. Hopefully this gives you an indication that God is at work and we can have peace about that, and we have been taking this seriously as a church leadership team. I know that things are unsettling and exciting, but there is no need to panic, and we will share more with you in early 2025. Just so it doesn't look like we've got everything sewn up, I want to give you one opportunity to consider this morning. One area where we are definitely still looking for new leaders is with small groups and midweek community. You might be someone who's interested in leading a group or a gathering or an event of some kind, or you might be someone who is interested in helping with overall leadership of this area. Please come and let myself or Mike Simpson or Kate Cooper know. But please keep in mind that sometimes a person approaches us with an interest in a particular role, but together we discern that another role is actually a better fit for them. Nevertheless, any one of you that approaches us and says that you're interested in leadership, we will take that very seriously with you. So that is DCBC leadership for 2025. Now I would like to talk about peace in a wider context. There we go. The Hebrew word for peace is shalom. It's even got a great sound to it, shalom. Now, shalom has a wider meaning than how we often use the word peace in New Zealand English. Shalom does mean peace, but it also means completeness or wholeness. So, for example, in the book of Job, in the Old Testament, one of Job's friends refers to how his property is secure or in a state of shalom, because there is nothing missing from it. His property is whole and complete. There is not a single missing animal. He has a state of shalom over his property. This is also why shalom can refer to a person's wholeness or a person's well-being. Another example, in the story of David and Goliath in the Old Testament, when David first visits his brothers on the edge of the battlefield, he asks how they were doing. He asks about their shalom. He asks about their wholeness as people. So understanding this word shalom then gives us a greater understanding of verses that refer to Jesus Christ and peace. So the prophet Isaiah says this about Jesus in chapter 9 of the book of Isaiah. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, or Prince of Shalom. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. And if you were here on time in the service, you've already heard Zach read those verses. So thinking of peace as shalom, as wholeness and completeness, these verses tell us that Jesus is the Prince of making things whole and complete. And not only that, Jesus is the Prince of making things whole and complete for all of eternity. The completeness that Jesus brings will never end. That is how amazing Jesus is. Jesus is our ultimate shalom. He restores the brokenness within us. He restores the brokenness between ourselves and others. He restores the broken relationship between us and God. However, if Jesus is peace and shalom, and we as Christians say that we are seeking to follow Jesus, and we believe we have Jesus with us and within us, that means we need to be people of shalom, who also spread the peace of Jesus, who also speak words of peace to each other. We need to seek peace amongst ourselves. As always, we can only do this with the power and love of Jesus. We cannot do it in our own strength. But we still have a role to play. It still means that we must seek peace within ourselves, seek peace with others, and seek peace with God. We must help Jesus Christ. Sorry, we don't have to help Jesus. We must ask Jesus Christ to help us be people of peace. We must trust that he is the one that brings the peace of wholeness and completeness to all situations. I want to give you one personal example of that. I talked earlier about needing to trust God's plans for the leadership of DCBC. I do not say that lightly because I have been on a journey with that trust. Initially, I thought I was very secure in trusting God, and I confidently came up here in front of all of you and said, trust God. Then, one night a few weeks ago, I came home from an event and I felt incredibly frustrated because it seemed that no plans were coming together, even though I was trying to trust God. I stayed up late and I shared my frustration with God. My wife was annoyed because, first of all, I sat for a long time in the driveway. Then I got from there into the lounge and I spent a long time there. Then I got from the lounge to the bedroom but did not fall asleep for a long time. Basically, I said to God, I do not think your plans are very good. Imagine that. Who am I to say that to God? What was happening? I had fallen back into thinking that God needed to follow my ideas for good plans and timing. In other words, I was telling everyone we could trust God, but I thought that God would have brought certain things to fruition by then, and he still had not. I had lost the peace of Jesus Christ. I needed to once again realize that Jesus is the one who gives me peace. And he says that in the Gospel of John. He says, "My peace I give to you." We don't earn it. We do not achieve it. We receive the peace that surpasses all understanding from Jesus Christ. And I needed to once again embrace that peace and breathe in that peace. And then I needed to discern what my role was in God's plans. I still had a part to play once I felt and embraced that peace again. And I needed to ask God what that role was. Even though it was ridiculous that I was telling God his plans were poor, it was very honest in that point in time. And it allowed me to work through why I was frustrated and pray that God would help me accept the peace of Jesus Christ once again. And that has then helped me speak words of encouragement and peace to many of you when you have asked me, "Mike, what is going on with leadership in 2025? And it may be that in multiple different situations, some of you this morning simply need to be honest with God and say, "I feel a lack of peace. I am frustrated at you, Lord, and I am humbly and honestly bringing this before you. What is it that you would say to me? Please breathe your peace upon me." And that's one of the wonderful things about the Psalms that we have in the Old Testament. The people that wrote those Psalms are incredibly faithful to God and committed to him, but they are also amazingly honest about everything that they are feeling. So look at your life today. What is one aspect of your life where you are in need of some peace? Maybe it's peace within yourself. Maybe it's peace with something from your past. Maybe it's a particular challenge that you are facing in the storm of life. Maybe it is peace with someone else. Maybe it's a relationship that needs harmony, reconciliation, or hope for a different future. If you have a lack of peace in your relationship with another person, then Jesus most definitely wants you to reconcile with them. You do not need to wait for that word from Jesus. He desires you to do that. You may need to ask Jesus about the when, the where, and the how, but you do not need to ask if he wants you to make peace. He does. I realize in saying that a few of you may be facing some extreme circumstances with other people where you may need to distance yourself from that person or set certain boundaries. I'm not necessarily talking about those situations. What I'm talking about are the 9 out of 10 situations. The majority of situations you're facing with your friends, your whānau, your church whānau, or your workmates. Have the courage to pursue peace with those people. Worship team, would you like to come up?